With that being said, let's talk about the scenario for a couple minutes. First of all, any situation where the health, safety, welfare of any staff member, faculty, student, anyone who is in your area of responsibility, that needs to be your prime directive is their safety. So one of the things I would suggest to you is that many of you didn't think about the idea of Randy, the security guard, being in the general population as you conducted this investigation. He should be immediately removed from the general population. Whether or not he is immediately sent home on an administrative leave with pay or just isolated, he needs to be removed, because here's the worst case scenario is while you're doing this investigation, another situation involving the health, safety, and welfare of another student comes under scrutiny while you're doing this investigation and Randy is involved. So you want to remove him from the population. A couple things also is to think about how you can delegate some of this interviewing. Many of you talked about you would conduct the interviews yourself. Try to conduct these interviews simultaneously as much as possible, and that way you can't have any cooperation between any of the witnesses, and it also will help you keep the rumor mill under control to some extent. Also to take written statements from everybody who's involved in this situation to document what has occurred, and also later they may come in handy if there are any court cases that come out of this, lawsuits and so on. One of the things that many of you talked about was the role of the police in this situation. And I'm not saying that the police should not be involved, but here's something to think about is that once you turn that over to law enforcement, they become the lead agency and you have lost control over this situation. So not that you should ignore that, nor most likely this is going to end up in the police hands, but you may want to be thinking about when that is to occur. And another thing to be thinking about is the use of folks at the district office, making sure that your superiors know what is going on at all points during this situation. Some of you talked about going to the interview for the new superintendent. I would suggest that perhaps you might want to call and not go to that, because this immediate situation needs your full attention. Keep in mind that this is potentially a very explosive situation and needs to be handled very delicately, all the while respecting the due process rights of all involved and the civil rights of victims and also alleged perpetrators. So you have to, as the leader, be very cognizant of that and constantly make sure that you are the guardian of the civil and due process rights of those involved. It's a publicity situation that could be explosive and certainly negative in terms of what it might look like to the general public. So make sure that you are keeping great records, documenting everything, and also that your superiors, as I mentioned previously, know what you're doing at all junctures during this process. Well, as you might guess, this was a situation that actually did occur when I was a principal of the middle school. And the outcome of it was rather interesting in the sense that the Turkish girl, Gabby, I call her in the scenario, she came back into school several months later after this had occurred. And meanwhile, the timing of this was kind of towards the end of the school year. And Randy was put on administrative leave while the investigation was carried on both by the district and also by the police. Uh, the girl who was fondled did press charges at first. So while um, while that was occurring, Randy was still out on administrative leave. However, what I would say to you is this is that there was really no great resolution to this. And in fact, I really didn't think he had done this because if you'd seen the room where it allegedly occurred, it was very small, and to have a couple of other students in there, I just couldn't see how it could happen without them seeing it. But when Gabby, the Turkish girl, came back, she disclosed that Randy had fondled her as well. What had happened was that had occurred. She went home and told her mother, and because of the cultural, religious issues involved, the mother, rather than report it to us, just pulled Gabby out of school. That wasn't that uncommon for those Turkish kids to be pulled out of school and returned to Turkey, so we never really thought much about it. And when we were doing our investigation, when we asked several of the Turkish students, they said that she had returned to Turkey, but that was not the case. So what actually happened in terms of the criminal case was eventually dropped because the victim left town. She just disappeared. So there was never any criminal case. Eventually, Randy resigned from his position. I'm not sure all the details of what happened in terms of that resignation, but that was taken care of by the district office at several months later.